Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I am Krymkat and I'm happy to be back continuing our conversation about boundaries. If you haven't watched the last video I put up, that was last week Saturday, you want to go back and watch it, because that is the where I laid the foundation for this conversation. And if you've not had that one, I think this one might sound kind of I don't know how to put it, but out of place or out of balance for you. So you want to listen to that and then come back and listen to this one. But let's get right into it. We established that boundaries are those clearly defined ways of how to relate with a person in the context of a relationship that is acceptable to you. And this is oftentimes, as I said last week, a result or a function of your own value system. So boundaries are not those things that you just put in place so you can look like you know what you're doing in life. Boundaries are things you put in place because of how you live your life and what you believe in, and to protect your sense of person, which is deeply rooted in the value systems that you have, what you deeply believe. And so that's what kind of sponsors that part of you. It's really important for your relationships to fall back on the boundaries that you put in place. And last week we said talk about different kinds of boundaries. We spoke about physical boundaries, we spoke about verbal boundaries, and we said talk about social and interrelationship boundaries. Talked about the boundaries between you as an individual and other people, especially when it is in the context of your romantic relationship. So your romantic relationship is a commitment that you have made to another person, and this commitment, unlike maybe other relationships that you might have, kind of demands a certain kind of loyalty in your interactions with others. So that means that there are certain things you cannot do with other people, or there are certain things you cannot or are not expected to say in relation to other people that kind of disrespects or pledges some sort of disloyalty to your current relationship. It's very important to be able to establish that, and that is why the conversation of boundaries, especially as regards social interrelationships, is important. For some couples, they don't need to talk about how their relationship or with other people affects their certain relationship, which I think is dangerous. But for others, if you want your relationship to thrive, you have to have that conversation of how your relationship with other people can affect your relationship and what boundaries you need to set in place to be able to prevent that. The next one, which I think is the fourth one, is really boundaries around psychological issues. And because our generation has come into this place where we are more mentally aware, there's this like call it there's this awakening towards mental health. And even though there are of course negative extremes, there are also some positive things that we need to take from it. And one of those things is how to not be an enabler to someone's painful past. So when you talk about psychological trauma or psychological boundaries, there are people who are recovering from trauma, and then because of that thing that they're recovering from, things that they have experienced in the past, they kind of have some certain level of uneasiness about certain things. So there are things you could do to someone else and they would probably not read so much meaning into it, but because this person has been traumatized before, has gone through certain things in their lives, that thing you do might mean so much and they might make a big deal out of it, you see. So I remember hearing this story about this couple um the female partner had been in a relationship where she had been severely abused. She was there was a lot of infidelity and all of that. And so when she met this new partner, the littlest things that other people see as normal, you know, for her they were triggers, and she would literally flare up. And her partner, rather than dismissing it and saying, oh, she was hypersensitive, there was nothing to this, decided that while she was walking through her trauma and recovering from the experiences she had had, was not going to try and enable her insecurity, right? So they would put boundaries that looked kind of different around their relationship, because he understood that this woman was dealing with this, and the more she healed, the more secure she got, and there was no need to, maybe take defenses that high up. But oftentimes when we put boundaries, we protect what we love the most, and we protect those we love because we can see that they are hurt in certain areas and they need to heal from it. There is a line between boundaries that protect a person when they've experienced a certain kind of trauma, and boundaries that are literally enabling bad behavior. And we need to be able to establish that. Boundaries that are enabling bad behavior see a person manipulative and using what they call their own trauma to negotiate things into a certain kind of way without making any effort towards recovery. But when you see someone working on something who has genuinely experienced hurt and trauma and are not trying to stay their efforts on their end, you see the work that they are intentionally doing towards it, and this is you're able to distinguish that, oh, this person is not trying to be enabled in this path that they are taking. Next is financial boundaries. There's nobody who does not need to have this conversation. Like, there's nobody. It's super important to draw the line when it comes to money and to understand how far can we go, how far we can we not go. And I think this applies to everybody on the spectrum, to the super rich down to those who are down the ladder. It applies to everybody. If you don't create boundaries around money, you're going to wake up and find that you're feeling resentment, you're feeling dissatisfied, you're feeling disappointment because of things that you did not earlier establish. So you need to have conversations about money, how it is spent in a relationship, who is bringing what and who is doing what, and what you don't mind doing and what you don't mind seeing. So for some people, they might be generous enough, but then certain habits are wasteful to them. And when they see you perpetually, perpetrate that kind of habit, it makes them pretty, triggered. So you need to be able to sit down, have conversations around money and set boundaries, around money, what you believe in and what you do not accept or what you think is wrong. Be able to have very clear conversations about money. It will save your love life. I think there was a statistic some year ago that almost 50% of divorces had a link to money. I mean, that's a big deal. And I think the problem starts where from the relationship people don't want to bring the conversation on money about. You're not saving your relationship by not talking about money. You are doing yourself the whole good by bringing money to the table and bringing it early on. So money is a big part of the conversation and you have to have it. You have to what? Have the conversation about money. These are the examples of boundaries that you can set. You can set them across physical, verbal, psychological, social, financial, and there are even more. I mean, so you need to be able to have those conversations. What is acceptable, what is not acceptable in the context of your relationship. Another thing I really wanted to talk about is how to maintain boundaries, how to keep them. Because it's one thing to make and say this is a boundary, this is something we're not going to cross, this is a line we're not going to cross. Is another thing entirely to ensure that those boundaries are not breached, those boundaries are not broken, those boundaries are not kept, you see. So you need to know how you keep a boundary, and this doesn't just apply to your romantic relationship, it applies to all your relationship. You need to know how to preserve your boundaries from being broken consistently. One, have a pre-agreed response to broken boundaries. Let it not just be that, oh, this is something I do not appreciate. No, let it be that this is something I do not appreciate. If you do this once, I might forgive you. If you do this 2 times, I'm going to have to take this decision. Let there be a pre-agreed response to any broken boundary. Let it not be that, oh, when people break boundaries and they do it serially, they get away with it. Nobody should get away with consistently breaking your boundaries, because you know what that signals to their brains, that they can do this and get away with it all the time, so they're going to continue to do it. But when you make sure that there's a pre-agreed response to boundaries, people will know that there are consequences to certain actions and they wouldn't consistently make them. Second thing I'll say is ignoring broken boundaries doesn't do you a favor. So if somebody that you love does something that you do not like and you vehemently have clearly spoken about it, ignoring it just for peace sake is not actually wise. The point you get to that for peace sake will actually break down, because there's not going to be any capacity to stomach it anymore. The resentment is going to build up and take up all the space and allowance you have in your heart for tolerating that person. So the fact that you're saying, oh, I'm going to not, make a fuss about this, I'm going to just ignore this, it's not doing you a favor. It's not. You're just not making things happen for yourself. So you want to make sure that you are actually not ignoring broken boundaries. When boundaries are broken, address them and address them immediately. Last thing I want to say is that the right response to broken boundaries is what keeps them respected. If people know that when they do this kind of thing, this is how you're going to respond, they will respect your boundaries and not keep breaking them. But when people feel like, oh, if you do this, this is how things can go, they can get away with this, then what's the big deal? what's the biggie, you see? So it's very important for us to be able to establish and understand that when boundaries are broken, we kind of set the stage for what can be the future of a relationship. By either ignoring or giving the right response, we can set the stage for boundaries to continually be respected, or we can set the stage for boundaries to continually be broken. We get to make the choice. So I hope you have learned a thing or two from this video about boundaries. Share this with someone. Share the lessons, share some of the boundaries you think you have in your relationship that would be really good, that would help someone else in the comments, and I'm looking forward to reading them. Thank you for watching. Please leave like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, and let me know you are watching. Let me know the names and the people behind all the views. I love you, and this is till next time. Bye.